And welcome back to a brand new episode of Your Wealth and Beyond. I'm your host, Andrew Raffel. Today we have a special guest in the Dream Plan Retire studio, Megan Greenwood. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
And I am super excited to learn your story. And I think listeners and viewers, you're going to be ecstatic to learn Megan's journey in this entrepreneurial world that we're in, and especially in an industry that is really for women and men in the brewing industry, it's an untapped in the world of women owned. So I'm excited to learn about your story and how you've built the Greenwood Brewery, how we built it up, and we'll go through some of your journey in that. So thanks for joining us today.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
I was going through the website and I love this, the why we exist, and I wanted the listeners to hear this, but it's, woman owned, women inspired, but real beer for all. Mm-hmm. So let's learn a little bit about, your passion for, first and foremost, has beer been a passion for you all these years, or how did we end up in this place?
Yes. Well, yes, it was, beer has been my alcoholic beverage of choice since earlier than I want to admit. And I come from the Midwest. And when I was younger in my college years, I would love to explore new beers. And at the time, it was actually right when new beers were coming out. So craft beer was just kind of becoming popular in the Midwest, at least. And so the beers that we were trying were Sam Adams, Boston Lager. We had the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. There was not a lot, maybe a little Fat Tire in there.
I love Fat Tire. That was a good one. Yes.
New Belgium beer. Yeah, that was a good one too. But not a ton, but it was right in my college years was when we were exploring, and I always loved beer. It was my go-to. So, and I have an engineering background, so most of my friends in college were men because at least in my school, because it was 80% men. So we just go out and have beers, and I just loved beer. I love to introduce people to beer too.
And so when you moved out here from after school, that you got your job moved you out here in like early 2012 or so.
Yeah.
And so then I was reading through some of your stories, so that you got, someone had, maybe your roommate or somebody had given you a craft beer, like to basically start brewing it at home.
Yes. Yeah. Homebrew kit. Yeah.
Homebrew kit. So you started concocting different beers. And
yeah.
You're like, wow, this is fun.
This is fun. This is
good.
Exciting, and it's delicious. And the first beer that we brewed was a Belgian Tripel that I created a rendition of the recipe on our menu, so it's on our menu all the time. And I remember we cheersed with our finished beer, cold beer. It was beautiful, and we drank the first drink, and then we finished the beer, and we were like, it worked. Like, it's an 11% alcohol by volume beer. So, you had the little rosy cheeks and smiles on your face. And I was like, wow, we made this. Like, we made this from nothing. So it's just a cool hobby at the time. And so it started in my kitchen, and about a year later, we had a fully built out microbrewery in my garage where we had access to 8 different beers on tap, and threw a lot of parties, had a lot of fun, and I just still continued to love brewing and wanted it to be more than that.
And so what happened after that? How did you start thinking in terms of, this could be a viable business that I'm super passionate about?
Yeah, so I come from manufacturing. So I'm industrial engineering by degree. I lived in Boston, worked for a manufacturer. I worked for several well-known manufacturers before I even started Greenwood. I made herbal essences, shampoo, and Whirlpool refrigerators, and John Deere farming equipment. And my most recent company before I started Greenwood was an electrical manufacturer called Eaton. And I moved to Arizona with them. And So manufacturing was it was what I was doing. I had done several jobs, worked in production lines. My very first job in manufacturing was working on an assembly line at Whirlpool Corporation making refrigerators. Manufacturing beer is very similar to those type of processes. It's just way more fun and exciting, and adds an additional component that is not included in those, which is your craft. And that each individual product is crafted by, one or two people that kind of define your signature. So there's like an artistic element to beer that isn't necessarily part of, shampoo, or at least major corporations in shampoo. So I had this idea that I wanted to continue brewing, and kind of pitched it to some people, and I realized that nobody was better at doing it than I was, than starting it than I was. And I was like, I don't actually need anybody. I can do this on my own. And at the time I was having I was drinking a lot of beer. I was having a lot of great conversations over craft beer. I was still working in corporate America, and I was really finding that there wasn't a lot of women behind the product. And so when I would go out and I would search for different beers, they felt really masculine. And it still today feels like a masculine product. And so I thought that there was an opportunity to add a feminine touch to this product because, there are a lot of women who drink beer. And I pitched that to a couple of people who were all men, and they're like, I'm out on that one. And so then that's when I was just like, I'm going to go all in. And I worked for another year, and started Greenwood, and worked full time for about a year, and then I left my job and started went all in on Greenwood.
And so at that point, though, you started brewing, and you didn't have the brewery yet.
Yes.
So you were then building and crafting and then selling to different bars and getting the actual product out there.
Exactly. Yeah. So my first conversation was first I knew I needed to get our beer into the hands of consumers. And beer obviously is alcohol, so it has red tape around it. So I knew that I needed to figure out a way to brew and get this into restaurants without having my own facility first. My first conversation was with a bank, and the banker, I knew that I was going to need close to $1 million to open our downtown facility. I didn't know if it was going to be downtown, but our brewery. And she said to me, okay, so you brew beer out of your garage and drink a lot of beer and have never been a commercial brewer, and you want to borrow $1 million to open a brewery. That's adorable. That's so cute. What a cute dream. There's something that you need to do first, which is called a proof of concept, that you need to establish a customer base before anybody's going to give you any money. And so I was like, okay. So I then went and knocked on doors and looked for breweries that were willing to let me brew on their system, and found a brewery in Peoria, Freakin' Brewing Company. I'll always thank them for letting me.
Shout out there.
Shout out. Yeah, they've been since acquired, but they let me brew on their system and let me use their space. I actually operated as a DBA under their license. Okay. And then I was able to sell Greenwood beer into restaurants and bars and tap rooms all over the state. My first hire was a delivery driver, because I really quickly realized that delivering a keg of beer out of my hatchback did not work very well. So that was my first hire. And so it was just me going door to door, selling beer, knocking on doors, and working full time still for some of that, and then having my delivery driver deliver the beer. And that's how we started, and how I did that for 2.5 years while we started Greenwood and securing our funding.
And so you were pounding the pavement yourself. You didn't have any other salespeople. It
No.
was you. So you're crafting it. Was Her Story your first major beer that you got out into the hands of the people?
Yes, it was. Yep, exactly. So Her Story Pale Ale. I did some research on women before I started knocking on doors. I did a survey of over 200 women to see what kind of styles they liked and understand the consumer a little bit better. And it was pale ale that was the best, that was the most selected beer that women drink. And so I went all in on my pale ale recipe that I had kind of changed a little bit from my garage, and started with that beer. And that was the only beer I had. So when I would go, I'd call up places like Pita Jungle, and I would say, "Hi, my name is Megan Greenwood, and I'm a woman," or I would say, "I'd love to have my beer on your draft list. Can I bring my beer over?" And they would say, "Oh, we're totally full. Thanks so much." But they had never heard of me. They don't, And I would be like, "Well, I'm a woman-owned brewing company, and all my brewers are women." And they would be like, "Oh, that's something new. Okay, 10 minutes on Friday." Little did they know that was like one of one person. I was the brewer and the salesperson.
Right. We weren't lying. It was all truth.
Yeah, it's all true. So, so then I'd get the meeting. And at that time, I was hustling, so I would do samplings at these places multiple times a week, and that's how I would get them to say yes. And I would promise a lot of things and do a lot of work to get our beer out. And by the end of the second year, or by the end of the first year, I think we were in 75 restaurants throughout Phoenix. And by the end of the second year, we were in over 100 restaurants.
Did it get easier once you got into like the first 10 and 20? You could use that as a catapult or was it still like you're grinding and you're having to go in and have these one-on-one meetings?
Yeah, no, always one-on-one meetings, always. Yeah.
So, and like when you're trying to get the different beer into their hands, and you're having you sit there, you go through your story. Obviously, was a male-dominated industry, so women brewer, all you guys are women. It was just you at that point. But are they're tasting it, and at that point, are they making the decision like right there, like, "Oh wow, this is good," and they're like, "Let's go"?
Yeah. So so much so that they would be like, "Okay, bring your whole portfolio to this meeting," and I'd be like, "Great, I'll bring the whole portfolio," and I'd show up with one beer, and so it was an easy yes or no for them, and most of the time it was yes, but I mean, there were things that though. In hindsight, yes, I had the great story, and it was something unique, but the beer had to be there.
Beer had to taste good.
The beer had to taste good, no matter what. And then, being able to be like, "Yeah, Pita Jungle, I'll come here once a week at each location and do a sampling, and they're for free, and give tasters out." And so I'm pushing beer too. And they're like, "Oh yeah, great, that sounds awesome." So that's kind of how it started, and then it just kind of got creative with getting the attention of some big brands. So we were in Culinary Dropout and Fox Restaurant Concepts that year in 2018, which was before I had a brick and mortar. So that was a huge deal. And to be able to have our beer on their menu was just incredible. And so, but yeah, it was always, I had 2 calls to me. Craft 64, they were one of the calls who called me to get my beer out. And then actually, who ended up being my landlord, Cindy Dash, she owns Changing Hands Bookstore, and they have a book bar in the bookstore called First Draft. And Her Story is a perfect beer for a bookstore. And so they had called me to ask to see if they could get our beer on their menu. And then the conversation continued where they had a location in downtown Phoenix, right where I was looking. I'd walk up 5th Street in Roosevelt and say, "This is exactly where I want to put my business." And she had space right on Fifth Street in Roosevelt.
The universe all came together.
It did.
And you're right next door to a good friend of mine, Aaron Chamberlain, whose Taco Cello is, I think, just catty corner to you.
We love those folks. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, he was actually just on the show a couple weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
So
well, I'll have to listen to that one too.
He opened up the Tempe location, so they're doing really well. So in this, are you still finance? So you didn't, obviously the banker laughs at you and says, "Oh," and then you're like, "Don't you were able to self-finance everything from the get-go?" Yeah.
So that was probably the toughest thing that I encountered in opening was securing funding, for securing financing. So the proof of concept then was there. I was showcasing that people were consuming the beer and we were on menus. And so, but then it was, I would say that was the time when not very many people took me seriously. So when I would go out to banks, it was, okay, we hear this all the time. Like, how serious is this person? And, I was 2 years in, left my job, was all in on this. And so I was not, that took a long time. I talked to probably almost every bank in the state, and it was a small, young girl that worked for a bank in Georgia that lived in Phoenix that was working on getting SBA lending.
Yeah.
And she was like, I see it, I get it. She talked to her underwriter. Her underwriter loved beer. He saw it. He got it. And so they ended up funding. An SBA 7A loan. So I was able to get our loan, secure our loan, and self-fund it.
And this was all around 2019?
2019, yeah.
And you opened the doors
in 2020. Yes.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. So we were in construction already. We closed in 2019. I had found them in 2018. And so we started construction in 2018. It took us an entire year to get through the city of Phoenix. And then we started construction at the end of 2019. And that's when we started to spend. And then we were supposed to open March 1st in 2020. And in the middle of construction, I actually pivoted and decided to take our interior design in a completely new direction, which pushed us back a month. And at the time, I was so devastated we were going to miss March, which was going to be the best month of the year. And in hindsight, it was a blessing in disguise because we weren't open yet. And so I had 2 people working for me instead of 14. And so we ended up, obviously not opening, and we pushed our open all the way to July 18th, 2020, which is next week, is our 4-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So what were you feeling at that time with the pandemic happening? You're just trying to get your baby off the ground and starting to run here. What were you thinking as now you're not only pounding the pavement yourself and developing and building out not just a lot of different beers that you can serve, but now you're creating a brand and creating the environment, and that environment you wanted to make it where it was welcoming to women, right? And now you've got 2 employees and ultimately 14. Like, what's going through your head at that point? Because you've never really been a business owner at that time. Did you have guidance? Did you have mentors, or did you just put your head down and just say, we're going to just make it through each day?
Yeah, at that time I really didn't have a lot of mentors. No, it was a real scenario where I remember walking my neighborhood and being like, at that time, when you think about it, it seems so simple, but my loan payments were starting. Once construction was done, which we were in the last 2 weeks of construction, so my loan payments were starting, my lease payments were starting. We're about to start. And these were all negotiations that I had then to push it as far as we could. But we had fully maxed out our credit cards, getting our beer into places throughout this whole process. So paying for inventory to get ready for the opening. I had a ton of beer. All of our customers were closing, so my wholesale business was now gone. And it was a very real situation. I had already spent $800,000 on a build out and equipment and inventory and everything. And at the time it was a very real scenario of, do you just walk away from everything, or do you keep going? Because you had no idea what the future was going to look like. And a brick and mortar opening at that point was not something that was a wise choice, or you had no idea. But it was very real. I remember walking around, I had my headphones on, and something came to my mind and was just like, just put one foot in front of the other and just keep going and take it day by day. And that's exactly what we did. And so we ended up pushing and pushing and pushing back the opening until I was like, we have to open or we will never open. And that's exactly what we did.
And so it was July then when you...
July.
And things at that point started opening up a little bit, or
sort of.
Kind
of.
It was
pretty controversial timing.
Yeah.
But we had 115 seats outside. If you remember back then, sitting outside was mandatory. It was 112 degrees that day that we opened. It was, not ideal, but we had kind of every precaution, every requirement fulfilled, and we could open because our primary purpose was the production of beer. So we could stay open. And so we were really the only thing open downtown for a long time. But we had a line down the street when we opened. So, and then but we still had, controversy for sure.
Yeah, but it actually probably couldn't have been better marketing for you because people had a lot of time on their hands. They couldn't go to places.
Yeah.
They wanted, drinking and alcohol became one of the crux that allowed a lot of people to get through things.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, it
could have been great timing, and at the time too, people just wanted to be outside and wanted a reason to be outside, even in 112. We had full beer gardens. So at that time, people just needed to get out, I think, of their 1,000 square foot apartment across the street, or
just that community feel and just being part of something.
Yeah.
And your family's background too in Iowa, so you've got some entrepreneurial experience there. Your parents owned a business.
Yeah. Yes. My parents owned Greenwood's Grocery.
There we go. Greenwood's Grocery, Greenwood's Brewery. Yeah. So, were they there to help you get through some of the challenging times of walking off the ledge and things of that nature?
In some ways, yes. They thought I was crazy for the majority of the time. So, anybody who's close, you have kids, you want to protect your kids, and leaving my very, very comfortable corporate job with a lot of great benefits to start a brewery wasn't something that they were super excited about. But yeah, of course, leaving my job was something that I remember calling my mom to be like, hey,
this is happening.
This is what I'm thinking. And I needed somebody to give me permission to be like, okay, yeah, you should do it then, if this is what you want to do.
And what's the percentage in the U.S. of women-owned breweries?
It's that's fewer than 3%.
Wow.
Of solely owned by women, yeah.
Have you started to see that? Has there been a shift? Has there been a change since you got in the industry?
Not yet. Mm-mm. And I think that's just doesn't seem like women see it as a potential future. And I think that, it's interesting because I would say, I don't have this statistic, but I would say it's at least 80 to 90% of the people who apply for Greenwood are women. People always come in and they're like, do you have any men that work for you? And I'm like, yes, we do. But majority of the people who apply are women. And so, I think we're starting to see, at least in our community, women that are seeing themselves as this is an option. And that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And the direction and the branding of the different beers, not just the environment you've created at the brewer itself, but is that also, do you have your hands in all of that as well? Like the way a can looks and all of those things.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's really fun right now. I'm going through a whole rebrand because I just wasn't loving. We had a lot of different people over the years that have helped with the can, and it's been my favorite cans have been from a certain artist that just is fantastic. Her name is Alexandra Bowers, and she is a desert baby. She's from Arizona. She loves her art is all around features the desert landscape, and so we're actually transitioning all of our cans right now to her art and with our graphic designer, and it's really, really fun. So yeah, absolutely. I would say my head brewer, Kristen, has been running our beer program since we started. So she was somebody who I had kind of been courting for several years before she moved over to Greenwood. And so she builds all of our new recipes now. We have some old homebrew inspired recipes on our menu still, which is always fun. So some of our iconic beers, we have a rosemary IPA, which came from what we called the garden series when I was homebrewing, and we did a series where I tried cilantro and basil and rosemary, and the rosemary was absolutely delicious and something that I always had on tap in my house. And it's become a beer that we're known for now. And it's just fun. I mean, it's, I would say it's not like we're making beer for women. We're just making beer that has a feminine touch.
Yeah.
And so it's for everybody, but it just looks a little different, and the can looks a little different. When you walk into the space, you can tell it's owned and designed by women. Women feel comfortable. So when you're looking down my bar, it's so cool, but a lot of times I'll be sitting in there and the entire place will be women. So I'll have a bar full of women. I'll have a beer garden that's all women. And it's just, I mean, it's exactly what we built it to be, is that women feel comfortable. And they're like, hey, I want to go have a beer. And I know that Greenwood is a safe space and somewhere that I can feel comfortable. We have a lot of first dates. We have a few marriages and kids under our belt at this point. So we're just, it's just adding a feminine touch to a masculine product.
And with that too, you're really looking at always giving back to the community as well. Mm-hmm. So how have you been doing that and entrenching yourself in the local downtown community? And I know you're a big proponent of also charity and giving some of that money back to those in the, not just downtown, but just in Phoenix in general. Mm-hmm. So how has community been impacted? How do you build that into your messaging?
Yeah, so our Her Story beer, we really kind of use that as almost our give back beer. We also have our space. We have kind of an event space that we offer to nonprofits for free. They pay a $50 administrative fee for some of the for paying for an extra bartender, but we offer that to our community. We give back a portion of the Her Story that every pint that we sell during Women's History Month, and we partner with other community organizations all the time to donate beer to make sure that that their event is fully stocked with a good product. There's an organization that I've been a part of for a long time, Fresh Start Women's Foundation, which is just up the street off of McDowell and 16th Street. And they help women get back on their feet after going through tragedy in many ways. And so we donate to them. I've been on their board for several years. And so there's, we're always looking, that's something that I think as Greenwood evolves, we're figuring out what is that going to be? Is it going to be one thing, or is it going to be a lot of different things? And we're still kind of testing the waters on that, because I would love to be able to do more even. But we do say yes to almost everything that we get asked to do.
Yeah. And is the wholesale side of the business still a big part of it?
Yeah. So over 75% of the beer we make is wholesale. At this point. And so we actually signed with Hensley Beverage Company at the end of last year. So they are now Greenwood's sole distributor, which has been incredible. And they're like, just their size and scale has been really, really cool. And like, even we are the craft beer of the Phoenix Mercury this year. And that's all through Hensley, and being able to work with them on this dream that I've had forever to be the craft beer of the Phoenix Mercury. And that's so cool, and things that are just opening up for us now as we grow.
Yeah. And when you think of the experimental beers that you have at the brewery, like, how does that work? Do you guys come up with an idea and then you craft it, and then we get it out, in this case, to the marketplace and see what's working, what isn't, and then you figure out if this one has some legs to it that we want to make it as part of our mainstay?
Yeah, yes. And I would say it's experimentals are interesting, because no matter what, you have to decide, what are you going to invest in? So it's a pull, but it is a pull. We do pull information and data from our customers, and we see how fast our beer moves. So if there is a beer that moves really fast, then we're like, oh, what's going on here? We should look into this more. But it is still a push. It's a decision, a business decision that we have to make, that, hey, we do want to go on this beer. I want to invest in the trademark and making sure that we are legally protected, and that before we invest in all these things. So some of those decisions, were made for me early on. So our best-selling beer is the Warrior Hazy IPA, and that beer is one that I don't have all of the infrastructure behind, but it just became our bestseller, and you can't deny it to your customers. And so we wholesale that beer, and we're actually just about to launch that beer in cans for the first time next week. And so it's the first time it's ever been available in cans, because we've heard that pull from our customers. But I haven't been willing to be like, okay, let's risk this and go all in on it until now. Because
the getting it into a can, it's just a big financial undertaking.
Yeah, it can't. Yeah, it's risky. And that's where our feedback, I think, most recently from our customers has been that they want to see more cans from us, and it's a big undertaking, because when you're canning, you have it's not like you can just can. In some cases you can can small batches, but in our case we have to can a lot of cans. And so if we're doing that and making a big batch of beer, you run the risk of it not selling, and then you run the risk of throwing beer away. And luckily we haven't had to do that barely in the time that we've existed, but it is a risk. So if we make a bunch of cases and our wholesale customers don't pick it up, then we're sitting on all this beer, and then it's looking at our community to help us get through that.
Yeah.
And so that's the risk that you run, is just losing money, really, more than anything.
And now, as you've grown into a successful business, and how many employees do we have now?
Well, we're kind of in the middle of a shift with Hensley, but typically we have about 14 people that work for us still. Yeah.
And so for you as a business owner and a leader, where it was first just you for those couple of years and just pounding the pavement and doing everything, wearing all the hats, what are some of the things you've learned now as having to be that leader, mm-hmm. and to not only run the business, but also lead the people? Mm-hmm. For other entrepreneurs that are listening, what are some of the things you've learned?
That's really what I'm actively working on.
Yes, we all are.
We all are. It's a full-time job, figuring out how to lead, and it's a trial and error situation where you do something and then you're like, oh, I don't want to do it like that again. Some things that I have been really trying to work on are immediate feedback always to me and to my staff, and making sure that everybody's on the same page, because communication is the biggest challenge. And especially when you have, 14 people doesn't seem like a lot, but there are communication barriers even within our 14 people.
Yeah.
You think about texting one person and that person takes something the wrong way or reads it differently. Now that continues, and we've all experienced that. That same thing happens on the business side too. So it's also hiring great people who are smarter than me at their role. And that's been my primary focus too, is getting the right people in the seats that we need. And we're really in a transition right now. And I can see that we are growing fast. And so it's at a time where the way that I was operating the business is not the way I need to operate it moving forward. It has to change, and I have to change. And it comes from me first, and then goes to the staff too.
Yeah, and it's hard to change when we're doing something the same way, but knowing we have to grow and evolve.
100%.
There's no playbook for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're starting up, you are a startup. It is a different environment. It's everybody does everything. Everybody, you almost fill a seat for a body to do any work possible. And as you continue to grow, you need to really find those skill sets within you and within your staff that are what you need, instead of everybody running around, running around doing everything.
Right. Or looking to you as the only person that can make the decision. And then there's a bottleneck. So being able to delegate to these talented people that you brought on.
Yes. And exactly. And I need, my staff now are bringing ideas to me that I wouldn't have thought of. Mm-hmm. And that's really where we are. It can't all come from me anymore, which is cool. It's a cool place to be.
And you guys have done a tremendous job with marketing. Your social media is great, and you guys are, defining the brand in a manner that is so personable.
Oh, good. That's great.
And you got to, and so that's, I think, a testament to what you built and to the story that you passionately have inside that you're able to share.
Yeah. Thank you.
What do you see then? What does the future look like for you?
Yeah. So, I used to say that I would never build another tap room, because when we opened, I come from manufacturing. I'm in the back. I'm in the production side, and I love to make the product. And I kind of forgot I was going to be running a bar. And so I used to say that I wasn't going to build any more tap rooms. This is our one tap room that you can come and experience our culture. And once I got great people working for me, it took a lot of responsibilities off of my plate that needed to be done. And I could dream a little bit and think of some growth plans that I would like to see. And I would love to continue to build tap rooms. And that's our future, is building tap rooms throughout the state and maybe even outside of Arizona. And maybe they're not owned by me. Maybe it's another woman who wants to build a tap room and have this kind of experience, and potentially guide that person to having a brewery in their location too. And I could see, it really excites me to think about how we could take a women empowerment theme that kind of we have operating in our brewery and bring that to actual ownership and how I could grow the brand to have other women owning Greenwood Brewing locations. I think that's really cool to think about.
Because you've already have the playbook.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there'll be trials and tribulations, right? But when you look at choosing for here in town, the potential like next location, because you the universe came together and you couldn't have picked a better spot for when you opened in 2020. What are some of the things that you look for in trying to emulate that?
I would like to find places that are similar to where we are. I love the fact that I was in our tap room on Monday, and almost everybody who came in, it was their first time coming in. They're from out of town. They're travelers. They get to experience Greenwood. And I love that we have a lot of tourists. So finding a place that has a lot of tourists, I think would be, and that's a destination location, is where I'm looking. So there's only a few like that.
I've got ideas now. Yeah, it's making sense. And you guys don't offer, you've never had food in, you keep it separate?
We do, but that is something that we are going to be adding to. I've never done food because I didn't want to pretend to be a chef.
Yeah, stay in your lane.
Yes. So you can order from our neighbors' menus and deliver right to your table, which is great. We'll have some small snacks in all of our tap rooms moving forward, and likely in the very near future in the downtown location too.
And on our first Fridays, a big business day for you?
Yeah, it's an incredible business day. Yeah, we best days of the month most of the time is the first Friday. Friday crowd. It's fun. It's a fun, unique day.
Yeah. Great thing that's been built over the years in the community. How are you managing with having a family, running a business, all the growth plans? How do you manage your time?
Yeah. I have a little one. I have almost 2-year-old at home, and it's more important for me sometimes to have a Saturday morning that I can work, being that we have a tap room downtown. I have a 4-day work week during the week, and I have a Saturday, and then I work on Saturdays as well. And when I first started Greenwood, my staff, it was really hard because I was single. Well, I was about to get married. I met my husband while I was starting Greenwood, and so I got married in 2020 as well. And but I was single or newly married, and didn't have any responsibilities at home, which actually made it more difficult for my staff to plan anything because they didn't have a schedule. I was like, I'm available anytime. Just call me. Yeah. Now it's funny how that shifts immediately when you have a family. And, even having a baby, being an owner, I hired 2 people so that I could have a baby. So it's definitely different. And I have different boundaries, and obviously I'm always available in case anything happens. But I'm not there every day. And I'm definitely not in our tap room every day. So it's different, very different. And I attribute that to having a family. I also attribute that just to growth in general too, and having the right people that are operating our business so that I can step away. That's
it. That's the key to a successful business, is being able to have it run without you there.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And not having the ego where it's like, I have to be involved in everything.
Right.
Because you brought the people in, they're making good decisions. And when needs to be, you guys, I'm sure, have lots of good conversation and good dialogue of, what's working, what isn't, what changes maybe need to be made.
Yeah. And we have a lot of processes in place, and I meet with my leaders once a week, every week, and we go through the past week, the upcoming week. I meet with our sales team, our marketing team, our events team, our brew team, our tap room, and making sure that everything's running smoothly. And so and I think that that's really important. And if you're, I haven't, even when I was starting Greenwood, I had an accountability partner that I would call once a week. And now that I'm thinking about this, she was probably the person who I would call in times of trials and tribulations. But it was 30 minutes to an hour every week, and we were both working on our businesses separately. But she was the person who I could call to be like, hey, this is what I did last week. This is what I'm planning to do next week. And this was a success. This was a failure. I'm still tracking here. And we did that for each other. That was hugely important at that time, being a solopreneur, being the only person in the business. You have nobody that's accountable to you but you. And that was a huge benefit. And I don't know that I would have gotten everything done as quickly as we did, even thinking that it was a long time. It was actually pretty quick. If I didn't have that regular accountability. And same thing for your staff. Same thing for me now, and same thing for our staff. And having that regular accountability for them is something that we've just always done. And I think it's really important.
Yeah. How do you do that? What kind of ways do you hold everybody accountable?
So it depends on the person, but we hold 30 minutes to an hour meetings every Monday. So when when all of our positions are filled, my whole Monday is almost all meetings with my leaders. And what we talk about is any pressing situations first, any personnel challenges or anything like that is the first thing we talk about. And, bad news first, having them give you any bad news that happens or anything that's going on comes to you first. And then after that, it's talking about the previous week, talking about the upcoming week, talking about the previous week. Where are we on numbers? Where are we on sales? How is our taproom sales? How is our outside sales? How is our production schedule? Are we behind? Are we ahead? What do we need to? How are our vendors? What do we need to pay for this week? Like everything. It's just keeping your finger on the pulse of the business, and then I'm kind of the conductor that just makes sure that everybody's doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, and that they are bringing to me the attention of any issues and any forward progress that we need to be making. And I really believe in that. I will continue to do that, I think. And my staff typically bring the meeting agenda to me. So whatever they want to talk about too, they can bring it up.
Doing all the things right. This is great.
I don't know. I don't know if everybody does that, but that's just something that's kind of stuck with me.
Yeah. And so if you go on vacation for 2 weeks or a week, you I'm sure have done that, and you've been confident in being able to let it breathe.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like they're not. I would say our staff know that it's like it's their team. It's their it's their job. But there are things that I've done for the last 4 years that are helpful.
Yeah.
Or since 2017, So, it's preventing mistakes and preventing lost time and lost money as much as it is being like.
Yeah. Well, and the excitement too of you now evolving the business, potentially having more locations or setting it up where you have other women that potentially can buy in or own the brewery in even another state. So that's got to drive your passion too, because it's, you built something and then sometimes you just, what's next?
Yeah.
And so having to be able to catapult on to the next thing, to continue growing the brand, doing it in the manner that's right for you, but then also allowing you, providing, I think, more opportunity for other women to be part of this industry and get that up from 2 or 3%. I mean, if your goal could be in 5 years, can we have 10% of breweries be owned by women? Is that even possible? Maybe. I mean, you're laying the groundwork for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think so. And I guess we'll see.
We will see. We will see. Any last thoughts for the listeners and the viewers? If, we have entrepreneurs that have this dream, have this passion, you had it, trials and tribulations, looked in the mirror every day and said, I have no other choice but to make it work. Any other last bit of advice?
Yeah, I would say just take action, get started. You have an idea. The thing is we all have ideas. Mm-hmm. Do you want to do something about it? And if you do, then action needs to be taken. It won't just come to you. I think things do come to you once you start taking action. But it's not like one day somebody handed me everything I needed to open a brewery and to start a business. It was step by step by step and continuing to take action and take action. And it all came together, and there are some really divine moments in there. And luck, whatever you want to call it. But it definitely is something that it has to come from you first. And the universe might give you a sign or something, but you have to take action to actually get anything done. And so that's what I would say. Take action and know your numbers.
Gotta know your numbers.
As we're talking about, as we're in a financial situation here, I feel like we knowing your numbers. I think that's something that people. It's a quick way to fail if you don't.
Yeah.
And especially starting up. And I remember when I was first starting, and when I was doing wholesale only. So wholesale, you're making 20, 30, maybe 35% profit, gross profit. So it's not very much. It's not like you're sitting there rolling in 80% profit margins. So wholesale sales at the beginning were pretty. It was tight, and I had told you before I left my job. And I remember I was sitting on a panel of women, and I was talking about opening Greenwood, and my budget each month was $422. And that was for groceries. That was for like everything outside of my living expenses was $422. And people can't even get their nails done and for half of that sometimes. And so it's like, but I was hyper aware of not running out of money and seeing this through to the end because I wanted to self-fund. Ego was probably the biggest reason, but for whatever reason, like I wanted to self-fund it. I didn't want an investor. I just wanted to get open on my own. And I remember like the jaws dropped of these women in the audience because they were like, oh my God, how are you doing this with $400 a month? And I still had a blast. I'd still get 22-night campground stays, and my boyfriend at the time, my husband now, I would go camping and travel, and we still made it all work. And but that was because I was hyper aware of my numbers. So I think I lost a little bit of that too in just having a baby, figuring out how to operate, and now I'm back to, okay, yeah, this is what this looks like, and this is how we can continue to grow and survive and fund the next project. So know your numbers and take action.
Excellent advice. Well, you're definitely an inspiration. We love what you've already accomplished, and we're excited to see what the future holds. So I really enjoyed this. So thanks for coming to the studio today and sharing a little bit of your journey. And we're excited to see where you're going to take this thing.
Thank you so much.
And listeners, all the notes from today will be below the video or on the podcast. Be able to get in touch with Greenwood. If you are local, make sure you stop by and try a pint and just enjoy the company and support a local business in an industry where not many women own it. So congratulations on what you've accomplished, you and your team.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us. All right, listeners, stay tuned for a brand new episode of Your Wealth and Beyond later this month. Happy planning, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon. Thanks.